This is a big box. I wonder what it could be. It's got a heartbeat. So as you can see, I'm throwing some of these parts back up in here. The other night I came down and put the engine back in, dropped it down in. While I was down here, I removed the original engine mount plates that bolt to the subframe, and I re-drilled them to move the engine 3/4 of an inch farther forward. I did that because instead of reusing the MSD ignition, I'm going to use the HEI distributor that came in this engine kit. With that, this engine originally had a small diameter distributor on it, so this engine was set up farther back against the firewall. And if you utilize the stock location of the motor mounts, the HEI distributor hits the firewall. So you either need to clearance the firewall or beat it with a hammer or move the engine forward. And I decided to move the engine forward 3/4 of an inch because technically speaking, it's not that hard to do, and it makes a nice clean look. Now that will make changes in my exhaust and my drive shaft length, but I've got some creative ways to overcome those problems, which we will take care of as we go. The transmission crossmember, I should be able to have enough room for the distance that I need just by slotting the holes a little bit, and it should be just fine. If I have to customize the transmission crossmember, I can do that, but I don't think I'll need to do anything too radical, anything more than just elongating some of the holes so that I can get the extra length that I need for the mount to hook up. This car had a solid transmission mount in it. We're going to run over to the store and grab a urethane one for it, which will soften the vibrations from the engine to the chassis. It will make for a much more comfortable ride. The solid motor mounts, while they're great for race purposes, they are just not necessary at all for street use. Pretty. That's going to be pretty cool. So I don't have any heater on this, so I'm going to leave the heater hoses blocked. I need to put a plug in my water pump, and everything's already plugged. I have plenty of room for my distributor, so I'm happy with my 3/4 of an inch. I will have to lengthen my throttle linkage a hair, but that won't be too big of a deal. I should probably figure my fuel pump out before I hang that guy on there, so I will wait to do that. I need to write down a list of all my little bits I need. Starter bolts, oil pump plate, which I may have one of those upstairs. Upper hose, lower hose, which should just be straight Camaro. Fuel line connections, and a couple other things. That guy can probably end up going there or there. Oil line, we need to make a new feed. Pretty straightforward. Coming along nicely. I dig it. I can pull my MSD off the firewall because I'm not going to use it. I was lucky enough to find all the factory original wiring tucked down in the fender, so I can just hook everything back up the way it was back in the day. Hook up my electric choke. Power feed starter signal to the starter. Might even be able to put the dash gauges back to work on this. All right.
So this fuel pump is pretty cool. You can unbolt the lower housing and rotate it so your inlet and your outlets are at any position you want them to be. I'm actually happy with where the position is now. This car has braided stainless 8AN line running all the way from the fuel tank up to here. It's got a filter and some other stuff in the line. We're just gonna make a short run to where his voltage regulator was and connect into his old fuel line. And then we're gonna eliminate his electric fuel pump that's mounted underneath the trunk. One, because it's obnoxiously loud, and two, because with this fuel system, this carburetor and this fuel pump, we don't need a pressure regulator. This system is designed to run with what this pump provides. So it eliminates another toggle switch off the dash and some extra stuff out of the back that doesn't need to be there. Again, this pump came with the kit. This turnkey engine kit is turning out to be quite a nice kit. Really the only thing I found wrong with it so far has been the starter bolts, and either I'm doing something wrong or I don't know. I'll figure that out here when I get to it. I'm gonna put a dab of Loctite on these bolts. I'm gonna get this fuel pump installed in the car.
So I have my tank ready to go in the car, but I need to pull out my fuel cell, and they cut a big old hole in the floor for the fuel cell to stick through. So I'm going to patch the floor, pull the tank, patch the floor, remove the electric fuel pump, remove the big old fuel filter that's up under there. I'm actually going to remove all of the fuel line out of this car, and then I'll reinstall what I need. This has a pressure feed and a return line. We're only going to need a feed line. So we're just going to pull it all out, and then I'll reuse what he has to create one feed line to our mechanical fuel pump. Our new serpentine system that came on this engine has a power steering pump. This car had a Unisteer manual rack and pinion in it. So we decided to go ahead, we've got the power steering pump, one thing led to another, let's put a Unisteer power steering rack on this car. So I'm going to do that this morning, get that done, at least so that the rack and pinion is hooked up and installed. That way I can run my power steering lines, and then we can keep moving forward. I just want to make sure I don't have any clearance issues, since I did push that motor forward. That Unisteer's got a spot where it may interfere with the oil pan. I want to make sure I have that addressed before I get everything dressed on this engine, because I don't want to have to pull everything back out to make some adjustments to the oil pan or engine placement if that becomes an issue. Hopefully it won't, but that remains to be seen. So right now I'm going to pull out my old Unisteer, my manual Unisteer rack, and get things ready to put the brand new Unisteer power steering rack in. I picked up a braided power steering hose kit for the Unisteer, and I'm going to need a knife. I have a new battery tray. That way our battery tray won't be flopping around up in there. Alright, let's see what we have here. Hey, we have a whole bunch of foam. Look at that. So this is our new Unisteer rack and pinion. Comes with new steering arms for the knuckles, in and out of tie rod ends, bolts, brackets, and hardware. Okay, that's pretty sexy. I hope it fits. I also went ahead and picked up a new battery tray, so now our battery tray will be secure up in the nose of the car and won't be flopping around and all loosey-goosey. So we'll get that installed today too. So the old rack bolts into the lower control arm bolts and into the knuckles, and then the steering linkage is right there. So it looks like all I'm really going to have to do is unbolt this rack and pinion and I'll have to change my steering linkage and then make some power steering lines. The big question is whether or not it's going to hit the oil pan right here. So hopefully we'll be okay. We won't have to clearance the oil pan, but if that's what we got to do, that's what we got to do. Let's get after it. So as I continue taking this car apart, right now I'm removing the brake rotors so I have access to the bolts that hold the steering arms onto the knuckles. When I pulled the calipers off, I found that there's no O-rings and no slides in calipers. There should be a collar that's about, I don't know, ½ inch or 3/4 inch long or so, something like that. And they should be in these spots, because without them, this caliper just isn't sitting correctly, and it also doesn't return the caliper off the, it's part of what actuates the return to release the brake pedal off of the caliper. So I'm going to find, I might have some. I used to have tons of those kits, but that's been a long time ago. So I'll get a kit and put new O-rings in the fronts and rear positions and the new slides. I'll show you how to do those so that you put your brakes together correctly, because clearly somebody didn't know how to put those in correctly. I'm going to spin that around so my brake line's not all tied up like a pretzel. Pull off my axle nut and pull off my brake rotor. I would say that was probably run down metal to metal on the brake pad at one point in its life, which is unfortunate. And my bearing is stuck on my... You're just full of surprises today. Consequently, when you're working on an old car, you're like, oh, I'm just going to bolt this part on today because it'll be real quick and easy. And then you run into 5 or 6 little things that completely ruin your plan of attack. But hey, that's working on cars. Alright, well, hey, now I've got access to this bolt and this bolt. When I remove those 2 bolts, it will release my steering arm, and then I can move to getting my old rack off of the car. And if anybody would like to purchase a manual Unisteer rack and pinion assembly, give us a call. We'll have it here on the shelf for you. Nice tight inner tie rod ends. Nice, pretty much brand new. Seems to have very little wear on the rack and pinion. That'll make somebody a nice part. All right. Put this thing up in the air. We'll disconnect our steering linkage and our rack support brace. It'll be time to put the new rack in. Pretty easy. So now I'm lucky because I already have a Unisteer kit in here. The Unisteer kit requires a replacement of your rear lower control arm bolts. So they need to be a little bit longer, because that's where the new brace that holds the rack and pinion bolts to. It bolts right into your rear lower control arm bolts. Luckily I already have these in there, so all I gotta do is undo the nut, pull my rack off. Easy peasy. All right, well that wasn't too bad. Oh, why don't you come off? Let's figure that out. Guess I need a pry bar for that. Hey! I win. Yeah. Nice little piece. So you can see the old and the new. The old one's on top, the new one's on bottom. I don't think I'll have a clearance problem because the power rack input is farther to the driver's side to make room for the power steering hoses that have to connect. Brackets are pretty much the same. The power rack and pinion zoom. The brackets are pretty similar, but they are different. You can see the manual rack and pinion on top uses 3 bolts to connect it to the bracket on the driver's side and 2 bolts on the passenger side. And then the power rack and pinion uses 1 bolt at the bottom with 2 bolts at the passenger side. So they are completely different braces to mount the rack and pinion to the car. Consequently, the manual rack and pinion use the factory style, or at least it appears to use the factory style knuckles, where the power steering brackets are a brand new unit that I don't know if they're billet or not, but they're a pretty nice piece. So time to put that power steering rack in the car. Let's get after it. Stop playing with your TV camera and get to work. So my universal to my input for this guy is going to have to be different because this one's a double D where the other one was a multi-spline. So I'll have to get a new universal, and I'll probably have to cut the double D shaft down so that it fits correctly because this does move to the driver's side. But we will figure that out as we go. Let's get this thing hung up in there. That's got pucks that move it out. Let's see if they are the same as the pucks that come in the new kit. I'm gonna guess that they're the same pucks. They are different. Look at that. So the manual rack uses a puck spacer that's that thick, and the power steering rack is about 3/4 of the thickness. So we're going to use the ones that came with the power steering rack so we get our geometry that they engineered into this kit correct. Oh, like a glove. Look at that. Oh, it's beautiful. Well, that's pretty awesome, actually. I dig it. Let's index and figure out our power steering lines. I'll definitely have to cut back my double D shaft and get a new universal. And that'll probably be about it. Little tech tip. When you're going to be using AN fittings for different things, and I've actually run into this with carburetors too. I don't know that you're going to be able to see this. It's just a bright light. No, you're not going to be able to see that. So I looked through this fitting, and inside of it, let me grab a pick. Inside of this fitting, there's a big old piece of machining debris. Oh, I dropped it. So this is a fitting I'm going to be using. I don't think you're going to even be able to see it. It's so small. But anyway, so that piece of metal would have either ended up in my fuel system or in my power steering system, which probably would have created a problem. I don't like introducing pieces of metal to fluid systems. Usually ends badly. So I'll be sure that I inspect all my pieces before I install them. I highly recommend you do the same. So I've figured out a few reasons for things. When we took this car apart, the battery was not tied down. I had a brand new battery put in it this year. Now, there's no battery tray in the front of this car. And the reason there's no battery tray in the front of this car is because there's an oversized radiator inside this front end, which comes over to here. The original radiator only comes over to about here. So when they put the oversized radiator in, they removed the battery tray, drilled a couple holes for tie downs, and just strapped the battery down to the inner fender well. It'll work. So I'm trying to put a good battery tray back in this, so I'm going to have to make some modifications to make it work, because I'm going to have to push it to the side to make room for the oversized radiator. Not a big deal, just going to take some time. Now, I'm under here, and I'm ready to pull my fuel lines out. I got to snip one zip tie there. And then I can pull all of my fuel lines out. They're all disconnected underneath. I can pull my tank out of the trunk, do my trunk repair, and move forward with my new fuel system. But I'm not liking these transmission cooler lines. One is they make me bleed because they're all frayed. But two, they run off the transmission up onto a solid point up here. And I would prefer to run them down low where they're out of sight. So I'm going to remove these transmission cooler lines, make some new ones that run down low in the engine bay where they won't be seen. It'll clean up the engine bay, it'll look nicer, and it'll get them down to a more natural position where they would have come in the factory down there anyway. This thing has a remote transmission filter up here, so it's just going to come up, mount into it, and then it goes over into a transcooler that's mounted to the front of the radiator. No big deal, just going to reuse all that stuff. It's effective, it works, it'll do its job just fine. We aren't trying to reinvent the wheel, but we do want to clean up the engine bay. We want it to look as neat and tidy as possible, so that when you pop the hood, it's like, hey, cool, that looks pretty clean. So I figured out how to plumb my fuel pump. I had to re-index the pump so that my inlet and outlet fittings didn't hit anything. Now that I have that sorted out, I can install the rest of my serpentine drive system and make sure everything works with it the way I want it to fit. And then a couple fuel lines, and should be moving forward. So I'm going to go ahead and pop these transcooler lines off, pull the fuel lines and the fuel pump out of the trunk, and start making my new fuel system.